What was your first time being in the front lines like?
Well, the first time we got hit, we were still at the reception station in Benoit, and they, which was a pretty good sized compound, and they had a barbed wire fence around us and sandbags for us to, with dug foxholes, and we got hit, and there was 200, I believe they said, NVA that came in. This is North Vietnamese regular army people that came in and attacked us. And wow, this was the first time I'd ever been in any kind of combat, and it enlightened me tremendously. We were firing tracer rounds, and they were not. The bullets would hit our sandbags, and we knew that they were close.
What else do you remember from that day?
How scared we were. That's where, in your heart, you're thinking, well, am I the only one that's this scared? But then afterwards, when we sat down and started talking about it, no, we were all scared. And that's where we decided, well, if you're with somebody that's not scared, something's wrong. So it's okay to be scared. Just continue to do your job.
And now, how often were you were that close to the Viet Cong or NVA?
Well, usually several times a week. I mean, I don't think there was ever more than 2 weeks between us getting hit, but that was very seldom. Usually a couple times a week as a rule.
What are some other moments that stuck out in Vietnam?
They put IEDs and explosives in the roads where we traveled all the time, because we went by truck a lot. They couldn't always bring helicopters in, especially if there was going to be 4 or 5, a lot of howitzers in the operation. Well, then they would bring trucks. We had trucks, and we would truck out and then go to a specific meeting place where they could pick us up and just take us a mile by air into where we had to set up as a unit again. And so they knew we traveled by. I know now that they could listen to our radio transmissions, so they knew when we were leaving out of the road. And these were just mud roads. These weren't roads. These were just mud roads, and they would set up bombs in them. And I can remember many times. Thank goodness it was never my truck, but the truck behind us. Well, actually, there were several times it was trucks behind us that got blowed up, which means we went over it, we didn't trip it, and the truck behind us did. And of course, we would stop and try to get the people squared away and give them medical help if we could. And usually there were enemy firing at us during this process. So
Tell me about the story, how you got the Medal of Honor.
we were, I think there were four of our guns were set up by a river, and we'd been shooting all day in support of the infantry. The infantry were moving, and they were against a reinforced heavy weapons battalion of NVA, North Vietnamese regular soldiers. And so we were firing low charges because they were real close. And then they were close enough that we could see them, so we started firing direct fire. And that lasted, well, at 2:00 in the morning is when they actually hit us. I mean, they'd been mortaring us and everything off and on all day, and small arms fire all day. But at 2:00 is when the battalion attacked us. And that was pretty amazing. With the illumination flares, we could see 1,500 of the enemy across the river. I mean, that was real frightening. There was only 42 of us. Now the infantry, that's not counting, that was just artillerymen. The infantry was out, and we had to be careful not to shoot our own infantrymen. But from 2:00 in the morning, the heavy battle lasted until about 9:00 in the morning. And that's when we finally had defeated enough of them that they broke contact and fled, and then we could call in air support and get our wounded out. You don't lose till you quit trying. You help the wounded people when you could. You know, I mean, night or day, if you could get to your brother and get them helped up, blood stopped, or drag them back to where you did. But when there's 1,500 people shooting at you, we couldn't go get our brothers. I mean, that was the sad thing, when you could see them get hit. But that was one of the reasons why I received the Medal of Honor for what I did, because I could see Gwendell Holloway, one of my brothers. He stood up and waved his boonie hat at me and said, "Don't shoot, I'm a GI." And I knew I had to go get him. So I swam across the river, made my way through the jungle. And when I came to the area where the Gwendell had been standing, there was a foxhole there. And there were 3 men in the foxhole: Gwendell Holloway, Jim Deister, and Billy Ray Crawford. Jim Deister was shot through the head and through the chest. When they shot him through the head, then they ran up on him and shot him right in the chest. And we thought he was dead, but Jim Deister was not dead. In fact, Jim Deister is the only one of the 3 that are still living today. Jim Deister lives in Salina, Kansas, and is doing remarkably well still.
So you found them. Did you take them back? Did you get medical help, or what happened?
Yes, sir. I brought them back across the river. I brought back, let's see, Billy Ray. Yeah, I brought back 2 of the men first on my air mattress, and then swam back across. We thought Jim was dead, but I wasn't going to leave him, because we'd seen what the enemy did to our dead and wounded. And I just pulled him up on the air mattress and swam back across the river with him. And then my guys on my side of the bank helped me pull him up out of the river, and we just laid him there. And it wasn't till the next morning that the medic said, "Well, this man's not dead." And I go, "Wow." I mean, he was shot right straight through the head, went in just behind this ear and out this ear. And Jim Deister's doing well today. Like I say, I go see him. I try to get out there a couple times a year to visit him. There were a lot of wounded that we tried to get back. There were a lot of the enemy soldiers. All of our guns had been firing beehive round. Are you familiar with a beehive round? It's a little pencil lead diameter dart that's about 1.25 inches long, 1.125 to 1.25 inches long. Look like little arrows, and they're made out of hardened steel. And in each 105 round, there's 1,800 of these rounds. And you can only fire, according to the Geneva Convention, you can only fire them when you're in imminent danger of being overrun. Well, we were definitely in imminent danger of being overran, and that's what we fired. So the enemy in front of my gun across the river was 5 deep in places, because they just kept running and we just kept firing. They just kept running, we just kept firing. The next morning, when a lot of us went across the river to help retrieve our wounded and dead, that's when we discovered how many there was. It was just that's one of the things that you'll never forget, is walking across the bodies of the enemy. And they were all NVA soldiers. I mean, beautiful uniforms, and laying there all blowed up. You know, it just broke my heart. When I woke up after the night of the battle, I woke up, it was right at a week later, in the hospital in Camp Zama, Japan. And I was there for, I don't know, several days. And General William Childs Westmoreland, he was the commander of all the military. I had got to meet him previously. And he was over in Japan visiting the troops that had been wounded from that big battle. And he stopped by my bed, and he touched my arm, and I opened my eyes, and wow, there was General Westmoreland standing there. And we talked, and he said, "Well, son, you've been put in for the Congressional Medal of Honor." Well, that amazed me, but I didn't think I had any chance at all of winning the Medal of Honor. But I thanked him, and he let me go back to my unit in Vietnam. because I asked him, I said, well, sir, I need to go back and be with my men. I need to touch my brothers. And he understood because he had been in a similar situation in World War II. And so he knew how important it was just to be able to touch your brothers. And so he sent me back to my unit in Vietnam. And that's what everybody was all amazed. You got to go back to your own unit in Vietnam? Yeah, because they were going to retire me and send me home. But I got to be there, and they took care of me while I was really wounded. And they made me a cook because I couldn't do the regular artillery job. So I was a cook. That's where I learned to cook.
So how long did it take for you to be notified that you got the Medal of Honor?
Well, it took 1 year and 1 day from the time that it happened on November the 18th, 1967, and I received it on November the 19th, 1968 in Washington, D.C. The footage from Forrest Gump, have you seen that? That's my actual footage. And that footage was 1 year and 1 day after I earned it in Vietnam. They took me to Saigon. That's where the big hospital was in Vietnam. But because I was shot 30 times. And that's why they took me to Camp Zama, Japan. I had all those beehive darts. I got hit by our own beehive darts because my guys behind me thought that I was dead. And here come the enemy. So they fired the beehive. And that's what woke me up, was when the beehive hit me. I rolled over into my foxhole, and that's when they knew that I was still alive. So that's how I got the beehive in my buttocks.
Okay, that's another reason they call you the real life Forrest Gump, because he was also shot in the
In the
butt.
buttocks.
Okay, all right, all right, all
That's
right.
where they got all that. They based it on my story.
That is really cool. So, well, they must have did research on you and like know about you. And they asked. How'd that go when they approached you? I'm guessing they approached you and they asked they talked to you and interviewed you about this. I'm guessing too.
Yes, sir, they did. They called me on the phone many times, the people that were writing the movie. And, well, what did this happen? What'd you do when this happened? What'd you do when this happened? And I just kept answering their questions. And then a day or two later, they'd call me back again and we'd talk some more. And a day or two later, they'd call me back again and talk some more. And I kept doing my job. They kept doing their job. They medically retired me after Vietnam. They medically retired me, but I still could go in. I went into the National Guard reserves. So once a month we would go on an operation, and I got to be with my brothers and got to drive jeeps and tanks and fire cannons. And so I was still there and still doing what I could. And General Westmoreland would send me out talking to the troops. Actually, I traveled all over the world. A military plane would come in and pick me up and then take me to the big airport, and the big airport would take me to Germany, to Yugoslavia, to Brazil, wherever. We have we have troops in almost every country. And General Westmoreland wanted me to share what I had learned in Vietnam with all the troops. And that's the fact that you don't lose till you quit trying.